This is a crossover podcast that I recently did. If you'd like to see the original show or follow them on social media, I highly recommend you do that for great content. You can find the links below in the description.
I would say about 30 to 40% of the folks who are coming to us have just been wrecked by these drugs. Their stomachs are a mess. They're regained the weight and they're super depressed because like, man, I had all this success. I lost 40 pounds and then it came back the moment I stopped these drugs and they're just feeling lost.
Welcome to the Fear No Food podcast, health and nutrition stuff for us normal people.
I have a special guest today, Dan LeMoine, and he is the CEO and co-founder of Revitalize Weight Loss, which is obviously a very hot topic at the moment. So really happy to be speaking with you today, Dan. Welcome.
Yeah, honored to be here.
Thank you. Thanks. It's so nice to have you and to talk about this from a different perspective, because I certainly have been talking about it a lot from the what are people taking for it and what are people getting prescribed for it, which is new-ish. But also this topic has been one that I think has been probably talked about more than anything I can remember, that it wasn't, although now it may be, a true medical condition. So weight loss to me feels like the thing that women and men have been talking about ever since I can remember. And everyone I know has been on some kind of a diet or plan at some point and succeeded to some degree and then failed again and then succeeded again. So talk about Revitalize. What made you start it? Where are you in the journey of your brand?
Yeah, so we started Revitalize, my wife and I started Revitalize alongside Dr. Noel Abood in 2017. And it really, I'll be honest, I left the business world in 2012, kind of jaded, just really wondering like what, as many 26, 27-year-olds do. They have this quarter life crisis, went into the nonprofit space, moved abroad. And I was like, how do I just make impact? And I think that ultimately brought me back full circle into the business world. And what got me into this was actually I saw my mom work with Dr. Abood to finally get freedom when it came to her weight loss struggle that I'd watched my entire life, her kind of up and down 30 pounds, depending on kind of what year we were talking about. And it really wasn't until several years removed from working with Noel that she's at weddings and barbecues and I'm seeing her enjoy herself and her weight is stable. And then as I dug into it and as a nutritionist, started really getting into the details and seeing like this wasn't just weight loss, this truly was anti-inflammation. This was measurable metabolic repair. And that's what got me into this and started talking with Dr. Abood and was like, hey, I think we could, let's formalize this and let's take this to, a market that wasn't Cleveland, Ohio, because it's too cold up there.
It's so interesting that you mentioned your mom's journey, because I feel like that's such a universal insight, like the up and down 30 pounds. Like I would remember saying, what year was that picture of me taken? Oh, that was a fat year, or that was a diet year. Like there were times I knew like it was so cyclical and it made no sense. And the way you're talking about it as more than weight loss, I think is something that I wish people were talking about way sooner, because it was like you go from one diet program to another and they work for as long as you're on them. And the second you're off them, they don't. So what's that? What you saw that happen with your mom? How did you get to an aha, there's more to it than the specific Jenny Craig eating plan or the Weight Watchers?
Yeah, Jenny, that was the one that she always does Jenny Craig things, fighting to find the Eggos amongst the the Jenny Craig frozen foods. I think the thing that really was eye-opening for me, and it's frankly eye-opening for many of our members, is we measure your metabolic age relative to your actual age. So you can actually quantify how effective your metabolism is. And I think, the last I looked, like 93% of Americans have some form of metabolic dysfunction. And we could talk, ad nauseum about whether that's the state of our food and big pharma and all this, or our lifestyle, sedentary lifestyle. But the reality is that most folks struggle with this. And seeing my mom's metabolic age as a woman in her 60s come down into her mid 40s and seeing that as the big unlock, that like her body was working for her, not against her, which is what I think it felt like, this constant struggle, this constant battle that like, hey, my body isn't working for me. And I think we've all feel that, right? You get out of your 20s and 30s and you're like, I can't just cut beer on the weekends and hit the elliptical and lose 10 pounds like I used to. Yep. Something fundamentally has changed. And we talk a lot about this in our book, and that like, as your body compounds stress, it keeps a score, right? Menopause, birth of kids, illness, injuries, divorce, like all of that has a very real impact on metabolism and your biochemistry. And when that gets out of balance, the metabolism slows and then it can become harder to lose weight.
What's the way that you measure metabolic age? I'm curious about that. I've heard that a lot recently.
Yeah, the easiest way for us is like an at-home, like a high quality biometric scale. There's some really good ones on the market that pull all these hard numbers like your cellular hydration, your muscle mass, your bone density, your body fat percentage, and it calculates in an algorithm and says, hey, this is your metabolism's working like a 70-year-old's. Well, you're only 40. There's something there. So as we improve body composition, one key number that we focus on is cellular hydration. If we can get your cells hydrated, that's, your cells are the source of all your metabolic processes. So if they're chronically dehydrated because you don't have the right trace minerals, things like that, it's going to be harder and harder no matter how much you work out or how much you cut calories to reverse that metabolic age.
How did you learn all of that? Is that something that you studied, or is that something you learned from your partner?
Both. Yeah. So I'm a board certified holistic nutritionist as well. And so this is the water I swim in every day, is trying to understand, there has to be more than what I would consider an oversimplified and outdated formula of just calories in, calories out. Yes, it's very hard to lose weight if you're not in a calorie deficit, but if the furnace isn't burning, you just have to live in more and more and more and more of a calorie. You have to work out harder. You have to eat less and less and less. And we see all the time folks coming in who are like, I am starving myself and I'm hitting the gym 4 or 5 times a week and it doesn't seem to be working. Something else is off.
What made you call it Revitalize Weight Loss? Because it sounds like you're talking about stuff. I know you're talking about weight loss in the end, but you also have this other thing that goes way deeper than a diet program, which is a synonym for
weight loss gets people through the doors. But I think, that's a great question. I heard this quote the other day, and I don't remember who it was from, but I just really loved it. It's some words I like. That's just like, the life you want starts with the body that gets you there. And just this idea of like bringing about new life. And we've all experienced it. And we know that like when our body isn't working the way that it used to, or the way that we know it ought to, it impacts everything. It impacts your psychology. It impacts how you move through this world, impacts how other people look at you. And whether it should or shouldn't, it does. And so I think this idea of like, weight loss really for many folks can be a gateway to becoming more active, to having that energy again and living the life that they want. And frankly, I mean, we feel like this industry, like there's a kind of a double meaning in that, like our industry is oftentimes predicated on people's failure, right? Like the incentives are misaligned. That's like, you have to stay on this medication for the rest of your life for it to work. You have to keep buying these special bars and shakes as part of this MLM for you to keep the weight off. And the incentives are misaligned. And so, maybe it's bad business, but like we are very upfront with folks right up front. We say like, we want you to fire us at some point, whether that's 3 months down the road or 2 years down the road. At some point, we want you to say, hey, my body is stabilized. I'm at my goal weight and I understand this system that's been built for me and I know how to use these tools. And that doesn't mean that there might not be another intervention, 5-10 years down the road, but we want you to go and feel empowered to not have to fear food and keep your weight off.
So 2017's not yesterday, but not that long ago either in the big scheme of things. So talk about the journey of the company. And I also want to hear about what you offer that's different than, because you're talking about tools and a plan. So what is it that keeps people, I get what gets people to a place, because I think that the right amount of coaching and accountability and planning can get almost anyone somewhere. And then you have a system that keeps them there. So talk a little bit about that. And then I'd like to just know what your journey has kind of been like over the past few years through COVID, which I'm sure was really difficult, or maybe it was a gift. I don't know. Some people say it was a gift because they got to learn how to do their business differently, but I want to hear about yours specifically.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's nothing, I think, completely earth-shattering about the various elements of our program. It's the way that we combine those, and then the personal touch of really customizing this for the individual. Like, I'm not a postmenopausal woman, so the foods that I'm eating, the amounts that I'm eating them, the supplements I'm taking, how I'm being coached should not look like a postmenopausal woman's. And that's really where we come at it. And we use some at-home lab testing to look at food sensitivities and other things that we can coach to and customize the food protocol around, as well as a supplement protocol. But when we talk about empowerment and sustained results, that's what I think looks different. Is like I've mentioned before, like this isn't just lose 30 pounds and regain it over the next 4 months when you start reintroducing carbs. It's how do we actually show benchmark, measure, and track actual metabolic improvement for you that you can see daily, and then equipping you between the years to understand these little microsystems of like, yeah, I'm not going to live in a structured state forever. But once I'm at my goal weight, I know I've learned what foods are optimal for me, what rhythms work for me in my daily life to maintain. And we've also identified some trigger foods, which I think is oftentimes the light bulb moment for many of our folks where they're like, wow, I thought X, Y, or Z were great foods for me, but actually they cause inflammation. They cause my skin stuff flared up, my gut stuff flared up. I gained weight. And so we can start to identify.
If you're enjoying this podcast and would like to learn more about what you can do at home to take control of your health, check out our book. It's an Amazon bestseller. It's called Fear No Food. It's written by myself and Dr. Abood. You can get it at fearnofoodbook.com, or you can find it on Amazon by just typing in Fear No Food, Dan LeMoine.
For me, almonds and Greek yogurt tend to be trigger foods for me. As a nutritionist, I would tell you those are healthy foods. But for me, if I want to stay at my weight set point of 188, I'm not eating those every day. If I don't want to have some mild gut issues, I don't eat those every day. I can do cottage cheese, I can do other nuts, but I've identified those as my trigger foods. And that's what many of our members, that's when that light bulb goes off for them, where they're like, oh, I see how I can use all of this knowledge in my regular life, still going out to eat and going on date night and all that stuff. But I'm not going to be shocked and depressed when I stand on the scale the next day because I knew that was coming because I did eat almonds and Greek yogurt. But I also know what to do for the next couple of days to bring it back down myself.
How do you figure out that those foods which are on the top of every list of what you should eat, Greek yogurt and almonds, right? How did you figure out they were triggers for you? And how do you figure out what are triggers for other people?
So there's some testing that we do, so food sensitivity, but then as you're on this anti-inflammatory approach, even though it's customized to you around your lifestyle and your biology and things like that, it is an anti-inflammatory approach. When we're reintroducing those things, you can start to identify pretty quickly what causes that skin stuff to flare up, what causes digestive discomfort, what causes weight gain. Those are all clues to us that might be a trigger food. That's not a, hey, don't ever eat this again, but having that knowledge is really helpful to seeing like, wow, there's some certain, I mean, we've got some members who are really maniacal about this and they're down to like, hey, I know this brand of vodka will keep my weight stable because it's potato based versus grain based.
Wow. That's some serious knowledge there.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me though, because I really think that, I mean, who would ever think not to eat Greek yogurt or almond? Like that's wild. And so, so is it always an elimination at first? Is that how you figure everything out for people?
Not always. For most folks that come to us, that they want weight loss, they want metabolic reset, and we have a program and a path for that. We also have a more flexible, some folks, they're running and gunning all day, they're traveling, and it's going to be harder to stay to some structured thing for, 3 to 6 weeks. And so there's still ways to identify that. And again, that's where maybe some of the lab testing comes in and just a little bit more trial and error with understanding.
You guys work with people in person, virtually, both?
Yeah, so that back to your question about COVID, that was like one of the big resets for us. Fortunately, here in Arizona, we have 2 clinics, and we were able to be kind of quote unquote essential in that because we have supplements or nutraceuticals, and so we were classified as that, but we still moved everything to virtual, and so that was like a big reset and reframe for us. That like, oh wow, actually, there's a way for us to transition this to a fully remote program. We do still see some people in person, but most of our members, even locally, around our clinics are remote, being remotely coached by our nutritionists and health coaches. So
talk about the program, because give me some little snippets of what's different about it. Because as you know, because you're doing this, there are so many, first of all, there are so many weight loss programs. That's like, it doesn't even sound like that's what you're talking about. I know it is, but I also understand from what you're saying, there's a lot more to it than that. It almost sounds more like a longevity program in a way, because you're talking about biological age versus real age and the ability to actually have an effect on that, which I think gets into this whole explosion of longevity discussions in medicine and coaching that's going on. So how do you differentiate yourself? What's really true about Revitalize that people should know that makes you different and better than all those other guys that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I mentioned before, like at the end of the day, we give a damn. Like we want you to fire us. Like we want you to be empowered, and that's that's probably bad business to try to get you off of the like treadmill of always having to come back and buy the things. But it's working out so far. Most of our folks come via word of mouth, and so that I think that's the thing that keeps people or makes people raving fans. As far as like what fundamentally is different, like we feel like in the face of like a keto diet, for example, which is very popular, like there are ways to get your body into fat burning without overloading it with fats, which arguably, if you're not actually in ketosis, is the most inflammatory diet you can possibly be doing. Everybody's like, oh, I'm doing dirty keto. It's like, well, that might not go well for you. And then when we talk about longevity, a ton of what we're doing, like I mentioned, like people come in for the weight loss, but what we're doing is removing inflammation, helping your body naturally rebalance, really doing things from a that would probably be categorized more as a longevity
Yeah.
intervention from a
Yeah.
supplement or a hydration movement, all of these things that we hear about on from the talking heads on Instagram. But guess what happens? You lose weight, and it's remarkable how you feel even after just 10 days of an anti-inflammatory diet. Not only, weight loss, we feel like should be a result of, because there are ways to lose weight that are not good for your metabolism. There are ways to lose weight that are fundamentally shooting your metabolism in the foot or shooting your longevity in the foot. GLP-1s maybe arguably could be a tool, not the full solution, but I think some people, the way they're abusing those, potentially are doing more harm than good.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of well, there is a lot of regulation around the pharmaceutical versions, but there's zero regulation about how people are prescribing the compounds. So I've
Yeah,
seen
and there's some stuff coming down the pipe, it seems like, with that. But I have a friend who owns several med spas here in the Phoenix
yeah.
area, and he's like, oh, all we have to do is add amino acids to it, and we can't say semaglutide, we can say medicated weight loss. So it's like there's ways around it, and it's, that I'm more libertarian at heart, so I probably like let people do what they want to do and make their own decisions. But at the same time, it is a little concerning because we're seeing the fallout of it already. So
Meaning what? What does the fallout look like right now?
I would say about 30 to 40% of the folks who are coming to us have just been wrecked by these drugs. Their stomachs are a mess. They're regained the weight and they're super depressed because, like, man, I had all this success. I lost 40 pounds and then it came back the moment I stopped these drugs, and they're
Mhm.
just feeling lost. And then there's
Mhm.
some more outlier cases that we've seen where it's like, I now have nodes on my thyroid, or I've got pancreatitis, or I had to remove my gallbladder, like some of those, we'll call them more fringe, statistically more fringe things, but we're seeing it. So.
Yep, interesting. Um, so talk about the business itself. What has it been like for you to start a company in 2017 in a very competitive market, but with a really unique offering, and then find yourself here in 2025 with these drugs that are all the rage? So what has it been like, your trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, being fully transparent with you, like, I always kind of have a little skepticism when I hear business owners talk about how they're self-made and it was all this and that. It's like there was a lot of luck in our early success. I think we opened brick and mortar locations in the Phoenix area with no virtual capacity at all, really. And we just happened to be coming in at a time where there was no other really holistic, natural weight loss programs in our area. So there was a demand for that. And then it was kind of on the tail of everybody having done and regained the weight from HCG. So like in those early days, just a ton of folks were just like, I tried HCG 4 or 5 times and I'm just not going to do it again. And we got lucky with just some really influential people in Phoenix on radio and with the Phoenix Suns who were just champions for our program. Going through COVID was difficult. We certainly saw a dip, but it forced us to kind of get to wartime priorities and say, like, okay, what is most important? Number one is leaning into our core values and leaning into this personal connection and really patient care or member care first, and then caring about everything second. And that, I think, got us through that hard time. And then we were having to rethink and reinvent ourselves now in the face of GLP-1 drugs. Like, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that we haven't seen, just a more difficult time, quote unquote, converting leads or getting people through the door. I think the silver lining of that is that the people that are coming to us, they really want and are bought into what we have. They're not just like, oh, I can lose 20 pounds in 40 days with you. Great. Because now they can go to get that from the drug. It's people who are truly saying, like, I want to not just lose weight, but I want to live longer. I want to have a more health span. We're just making raving fans. And so it's, while maybe the volume is less in the face of these medications, we're pretty happy with the folks that are coming our way because they're either saying, hey, I'm on this medication, I want to bridge off of it, or I want to avoid it completely. And that's right up our alley and dovetails really nicely with our philosophy.
What is it like for someone to work with you? What's the process like?
Yeah, so it really kind of depends on what that person needs and wants, but it typically looks like daily monitoring. So we're not touching base with you daily, but most of our members have an at-home device, a scale that syncs right up into our app where they can
Okay.
see their internal biometrics. We're monitoring that daily. So if something looks off or they put something in their food journal or what have you, we can reach out proactively if they're plateauing or what have you. And then we're typically working with you weekly. So most folks we're meeting with you weekly just to make sure that you're actually feeling good. It's not just about pounds on the scale. It's these non-scale things like what's your sleep quality like? How are you moving? What's your energy like? Are you hungry? Are you not hungry? And then continuing to tweak and adjust the program from there. Back to your question about what makes us unique, I think many programs have a lot of really great short-term features and benefits, but they fail to really reintroduce somebody back to real life. And so we always spend at least 3 to 6 weeks after somebody's gone through, this anti-inflammatory stage of weight loss to really reset the metabolism. And there's something called the weight set point theory, which is really this theory that like your hypothalamus helps regulate your body's weight. And if we can get your weight to lock on to a specific number, the more likely it is to want to stay there. And so we spend about 3 to 4 weeks reintroducing foods, identifying those trigger foods like we talked about. But really, that's our time it's the only time we ask you to count calories. And it's because we want you to eat over a certain amount. And it freaks people out, frankly. They're like, how am I supposed to eat 2,200 calories a day and keep 30 pounds off? That's the point. We want to train your body and show you that like you can eat a ton of whole foods and still be at a regular day's worth of energy and the weight stays off.
Do they work with you? Do they work with coaches? Do they work with the doctor? Is it all of the above?
Christy, I'm a terrible coach.
Okay.
You're gonna tell me you ate cheesecake. I'm like, I love cheesecake. Send me the recipe. No, we've got board certified health coaches and nutritionists that people are working with. And then
Okay.
of course, people see me either in the office or I'll hop on calls with folks just to spread the love. So.
And then the doctor that you partner with, is he involved still?
At this point, not really, unless there's a specific case. So he in 2021, Noel took more of a back seat
Yeah.
as we got launched here.
Okay. And then how long does a average person stay with you?
Typically 6 to 12 months for most folks. There's some folks who have a little bit of a shorter term intervention, where they're like, hey, I just need the system and kind of get the empowerment and then I can take it from there. And we also do have some like self-guided paths for folks who are like, I don't really need the coaching. I'm good at keeping myself accountable to a plan. I just want my customized plan. And so we have that as well. But for most folks who are looking for, 30, 40, 50, 100 pounds, it's between 6 to 12 months. And the less weight, typically we see a little bit less time on the retention side of things.
And how strict is it?
It's pretty structured. Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I think the big thing for us that we monitor is like, if you're hungry, if your energy's dipping, that's not normal. Our philosophy is that if like we are nourishing your body and feeding it the fuel that it needs, it can lose weight and still feel good. So if you're chronically low energy, chronically hungry, we need to hear from you. But it is structured. Like we're removing fats and oils for a time. We're removing any inflammatory, like processed carbs for a time. We're going to be a little bit persnickety about like, we don't just want you eating chicken for 40 straight days. We want you to get a broad spectrum of amino acids. So we want you eating different foods. And that said, I think from what I see is less structured than many really structured programs where we're saying, hey, here's the guardrails, but within those boundaries, have at it. Like you want to do this, do that, eat this way, as long as it's on this list that we've put together for you and kind of within these rules, like go for it. And then because you're working with a coach, if the intermittent fasting protocol isn't working for you or that doesn't jive well from your medical past or what have you, let's change it. Oh, you want to do HIIT workouts? Well, guess what? You're not going to be getting the same amount of energy as the person who just sits behind a computer all day. And so we really try to customize every element to just fit, your lifestyle as well as your biology.
Well, that's awesome. Tell me a little bit about the challenges. Like what What would you say have been, and you could say now, you could say what the biggest challenges since 2017. What do you feel like? Because you know, a lot of people who listen are founders themselves and trying to figure out how to navigate things. So what were the biggest challenges that you've had to navigate?
I think the biggest one has been identifying who our ideal customer is. I think in the beginning, it was somebody who was near one of our brick and mortars, maybe a little bit less tech savvy, but now as we've moved into this virtual environment, it is a different person. Like I had a call yesterday with a woman who's interested, and she's like, I don't have a computer. I need to come see your office. I live an hour and a half away. And it's like,
Oh,
probably not our ideal person anymore.
right.
And so just identifying like those psychographics and who is that? And like, so that for us now, that is somebody who really doesn't want to take these medications or wants to come off these medications, and is more holistic minded. Whereas previously it was somebody who was just like, I would like to lose 20 pounds in the next 40 days. And it sounds like you can get me there. Oh, and you guarantee it? Okay, great. Well, guess what? The the better offer is here, right? You can take this shot and lose that weight. We can argue about how healthy that is, but if that is your main goal, like that person may not be our best customer. And so that's, I think, been our biggest challenge in the face of these medications over the last 24 months. And then of course, just the ebbs and flows of running a business. And now that we have mostly virtual, do we need all of our square footage, and just making sure that like our operational expenses are in line with where our top line revenues are, so that we can continue to exist. And then I think the third thing for us is just we see a massive opportunity in the supplement space. We never set out to sell supplements. I had a kid that was working here as a nutritionist who's like, I think we should like put our supplements up on a website on Shopify. And I was like, well, what's Shopify? And I was so heads down on just the coaching element. And people kept asking, hey, where can I get these supplements that were part of my program? We're like, well, I guess you could buy them. You can drive in and get them. And he's like, we should put these up online. And since then, that has just continued to grow. And we're like, well, we're putting zero effort behind that. Maybe we should be thinking, and that's a very competitive space, as you know, but we feel like there's a lot of opportunity given our history of results, and that we aren't just shilling supplements. It's really, we take those very seriously, just like we do our coaching programs.
What did you mean when you said guarantee?
We actually guarantee results for some, depending on which program you do. So we typically guarantee minimum of 20 pounds on our 40-day metabolic reset and weight loss program.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so what that typically looks like is like we can opt to extend at our cost and work with you till we get to that goal. Or if it comes to the point where, hey, I'd like to exercise that guarantee, we just prorate it based on how much weight you did lose. So if you lost 19 and a half pounds, you're not getting back as much money as if you only lost 1 pound. And we have a 94.5% success rate as far as measured by the amount of people taking us up on that, exercising that guarantee is less than 5%. So, or just over 5%. So
that's pretty amazing. That's very unusual.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to aligned incentives like that. That's what you're like, hey, I want to lose weight. Like, okay, great. As a business owner, I don't want to give you your money back.
Yep.
Right. And
That's
so,
cool. No, I mean, it's so interesting
yeah,
you said that, because I do the same thing with my business. I guarantee a certain amount of return, or else the same thing as you, I'll work for as long as I need to work to get you there. And I think when you say that to people, first of all, they don't even believe it.
yeah,
What's the catch? What are you going to
yeah,
tell me at the end that's going to make
yeah,
it possible? Because nobody does that anymore. But
right.
it's so compelling. I almost wonder if people don't even believe it, or because it's really unusual to have that, because you're relying
Yeah.
on them to do a lot of things, right?
Yeah, and of course we put some stipulations in there
Of
because
course,
we can
of course.
see what you're eating and all that. It's like if there's chronic deviations, like we'll work with you, but like if you
Yeah,
just deviated the whole time, or you weren't missing check-ins, this and that, then like you're not
yeah,
eligible.
yep, yep.
Mhm.
Interesting, fascinating. Um, If I were going to ask you to give some advice, like what kind of lessons have you learned? What would you share with people who are trying to start a business? And I think you could talk generally, but then also specifically, this is a crazy world of healthcare and weight loss, and it's confusing to people
Mm.
because I could read any, if I want to find proof of any diet that there ever was, I'll find
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
I'll confirm that that's the diet I should be on, or I'll confirm that this is the medicine I should take, or so it's confusing for people, and you're in the middle of it all. Despite having a very clear vision, you're still in the middle of a very confusing category. So what would you say?
Yeah, and from a business owner to another business owner. I think one of the biggest aha moments that I had recently was at like a conference, and there was a marketing, guru up there, and he showed this slide of like pre-COVID, the amount of work that your marketing needed to do was like 50% of the work. So top of funnel to like halfway down the funnel, and then sales could take the
Yep.
rest of the way. Post-COVID in like our new world, it's like 80% of your marketing needs to do the work. And in B2C sales, it probably needs to be like 90% of your marketing. And so back to what you just said, you're like, I can go find research on any diet. It's like that is now the consumer mindset where they're like, I
Yeah.
want to research you. I want to see testimonials and case studies and watch videos and read every one of your 960 reviews before I ever hear from you or want to talk to you. And so
Yes.
we've really had to, from a marketing perspective, think about the consumer before they get to our. We spend a lot of time thinking about what their experience is from that moment that they step through the door on, but really thinking higher in the quote unquote funnel is really important, and continues to be a challenge. But I think that would be my big takeaway that I'd share is just like thinking through like, is your marketing doing the work for you? Because it has to in this day and age where there is so much. People want to find out about you. They don't want a sales call. 7 or 8 years ago when we started this, we could charge you $45 to $100 for you to just come and learn more. That
Yeah.
isn't the reality anymore. People want to learn all that they can before they're ever talked to. They don't want to get a call from Dan. They don't want to get a call from my member success manager until they've done their research and have made that decision like, okay, let's take the next step. And so your website, your marketing needs to tell your story better.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's another really, I think that's an insight that I don't hear people talk about very often, but I do think you're right, especially in this industry. I mean, I know it's true for me. I won't take a call from someone or make a call to someone until I already made the decision in my head that
Mhm.
I'm like 99% there by the time I actually have a conversation. And you can get there because as long as the brand has enough content
Yeah.
that tells the story properly. And I think you could get there, but it's so interesting because that's a lot of work for something that people might or might not see to do, right?
Yeah.
You
And
got,
and let's not forget, like word of mouth marketing is still marketing, right? Like if you
yeah, of
can,
course.
like when we ran a school in the Dominican Republic, my wife was the headmistress or headmaster or whatever you want to call it. And like she would do these parent nights. And I think about this often where she would do these parent nights and she would basically bring all the parents of our students and she would talk to them about like, here are the things that we would love for you to, when you hear this, when you hear friends complaining about their kids' school, this, and this, those are the things we're strongest at. That's when you talk about our school. Like that's when you make the introduction. And we think about that a lot. It's like the more you can, once you do have a customer, the more you can onboard them more efficiently, educate them, empower them. I think the better advocates they become. And we also see, because we do have supplements, it's like the things that our coaches when we educate our members better on like, hey, here's why this supplement is so important. We see sales of that supplement go up when our coaches have that better understanding, when our staff have that better understanding, and then can transmute that empowerment and understanding to the member. We see all the metrics tend to move better.
Yeah. Will you, this is I almost never ask questions that are, will you ever, but will you consider adding a physician and the drugs?
We've considered, we certainly, that was on the board. Not that it would be wrong to do that. I just think given my convictions, my wife's convictions, Dr. Aboud's convictions, and frankly, I'd probably lose half my staff because they see the fallout of it too. That said, we originally, when these things started really kind of capturing the zeitgeist and everybody was talking about them, we were like, we're going to go hard against. Like everybody's zigging, we're going to zag. And
Yep.
we really had to kind of recalibrate and say, like, but wait a second, we don't go hard against these other medications that I would say you could solve with lifestyle interventions like high blood pressure and cholesterol and these type of
That's
things.
right.
Why are
Right.
we going after these drugs so hard when like they are a tool, not the full solution? And if somebody is interested in the full solution and want to come to us in tandem with them. So what ends up happening for us is oftentimes folks are like, hey, like I just sat with a gentleman out in our lobby last week who's been on our program. He's lost 60, 70 pounds. He's like, hey, because of some of my blood sugar stuff and because it seems like weight loss is slowing, I'm considering going on them. It's like, great. Here's a couple doctors that we trust who aren't going to just like keep you on these things forever. and let's do this together. And I think like that is the way to go about it. It's like, hey, this is a short-term intervention paired with lifestyle stuff. And so that's where kind of we end up falling. So to answer your question, I don't think we will. I think we'd be open to it. We've talked to a couple private equity firms who were like, hey, we'd love to have a coaching arm to this group of physicians who are prescribing this. There might be opportunities there. But right now, I think we probably still stick more on the holistic side of things and launch like a berberine product or have like an alternative GLP-1 program that's more naturally minded.
That's so interesting because I think the reason I asked you is because I do think that a lot of what's happened, and you mentioned this, is misuse, right? People don't actually know what they're getting into. They just hear about it and they're like, that's it. I'm done. I'm doing this. And then they're on it and they're like, I don't feel that good. Maybe I shouldn't be eating these things, but I can because I'm still losing weight. Like, I think there's so much misuse and misalignment on what it actually means to be on one. I wonder if a program like yours could be such a good addition for someone who unsuspectingly just goes on it and then all of a sudden finds himself feeling worse in some ways. They feel good and then bad also because they're not eating right or the medicine's affecting them in a way they weren't expecting.
If you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, I want you to know that it is not free. Well, you're watching it for free or listening to it for free, but we have a gentleman's agreement here at the Fear No Food podcast. We put a lot of work into this podcast, and all we would ask in return is that you like and subscribe on whatever podcast player that you're listening on, or if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. There's no way that I'm going to be able to check to see if you did. That's why it's the gentleman's agreement. Really appreciate if you took the moment to click that link and subscribe.
There's a company that I look up to online. I don't really know anybody there, but it's called Calibrate. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but their program is very similar to ours. They use the same at-home scale. They've got an app. They have the coaching, and they just help facilitate a conversation with a practitioner who can prescribe you these medications in tandem with it. My argument is like, why even go down the medicated route when we know and we see that you can lose 10% of your body weight in the next 6 weeks without them? That, again, separate conversation. But I love that. It's like, maybe there is a case that, and I'm not fully convinced yet, but I think maybe there's a case that like you shouldn't be able to prescribe this unless you are on a regimen of some kind that's going to help mitigate muscle loss and stack the deck in your favor against some of these other things.
And now there's like, when I was at Expo, I don't know if you go to Expo West or not. Okay, so at Expo I saw so many supplements that were GLP-1 blah 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 that were going to help all the people who are on GLPs feel better, and I think that's interesting. I mean, there's a I don't know if they actually work, but there's definitely a market for it because there are definitely a lot of people that are on drugs that don't understand them and don't feel particularly good. Totally.
And there's a ton of ways to naturally increase we all have glucagon-like peptide 1 in our receptors in our body. Like you can naturally increase your GLP-1 hormone without the use of these drugs. And like, I think, through berberine or extra virgin olive oil or working out, like there's a ton of ways that like with lifestyle and diet, you can affect that. And that's, I had a conversation with my naturopath about this. I'm like, hey, let's talk about peptides. Like maybe there's one for like muscle growth and this and that. He's like, Dan, are you in the gym 5 days a week? Are you eating 180 grams of protein? I'm like, no. He's like, well, when you do that and you plateau, then we'll talk. And I'm like, thank you. Like, that's what I should have done that myself, but that's how I think about some of these things. But I also understand that if you've wrestled with your weight and you're 350 pounds, you wrestle with your weight your entire life, and this could get you kickstarted. I'm not going to be the one to say don't do it. But yeah.
Well, I really appreciate all your time. This is so awesome. And tell people how to find you.
Yeah, you can find us online at joinrevitalize.com. Our handles on all the Instagram and things like that is revitalize.weightloss on Facebook and Instagram. Happy to connect. This was wonderful to connect with you, Christy.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.